Your Excellency, Bishop Barris, my brother priests, my dear people of God. I don't think I've seen a sea of red, white, and blue like this in a long time. We are proud to be Americans, are we not? And we are certainly just as proud to be Catholics. As our bishops remind us, the one does not contradict the other. We are proud to be both. And we gather on a day of great celebration across America, a day in which we commemorate the signing of the Declaration of Independence, by which 13 colonies broke from the political bands with the King of Great Britain and established the United States of America. As Americans, and as Catholics, we are proud to be a free people. Our freedom is precious. Our freedom has come certainly with a price. Our freedom, above all, corresponds to who we are as sons and daughters of God our Father. What is freedom? Well, at its very heart, freedom is the ability to choose. We can be responsible for our actions precisely because freedom means that this action, this choice, is my act, my choice. One of the abilities that makes us distinctly human is this power to choose, this ability to act of our own responsibility. Freedom is what separates us from all of God's creatures here on earth. We are free. For our freedom, however, to function properly, it must always be not only a freedom from, but a freedom for. In today's gospel, Jesus meets two men, two demoniacs, who were enslaved by demons. These devilish creatures want nothing to do with Jesus because they know that he has come to break their hold on these poor men. Jesus wants these two and wants every one of us to have the freedom of his kingdom, the kingdom of grace. As we can see in this exorcism of today's gospel, Jesus frees these men from something. He frees them from coercion and possession of demons. They have been enslaved, not able to act consciously for the good. They have lived among the tombs, separate from their family and friends. They were rapidly losing their own human dignity until Christ comes and dismisses the demons to go into the swine. Imagine, if you will, the joy that these men experience. The joy that comes when we are free from evil and coercion. At last, they can return to their family and friends. They can breathe a sigh of relief because at last they were no longer struggling with someone else possessing their bodies and essentially trapping their souls beneath an oppressive cloud of evil. Freedom, however, is not simply a freedom from, but it is also a freedom for. Freedom does not reach its fulfillment by remaining this state of non-pressure or non-coercion, or simply by being the ability to choose. No, freedom, our freedom, is a freedom for something. It finds its ultimate purpose and fulfillment in choosing something, or better yet, someone. Freedom is given to us by God so that we can choose, and choose not evil, but good. The greatest good being God Himself. In a very real sense, our Almighty Father has given us freedom ultimately so that we can choose Him freely. This is what the Second Vatican Council says. God left man, quote, in the power of his own counsel, so that he would seek his Creator of his own accord and would freely arrive at full and blessed perfection by cleaving to God. Do you see now what freedom is for? It's so that we can cleave, cling, attach ourselves, be possessed, if you will, by God. Jesus performs this exorcism in today's gospel so that these possessed men will be ultimately able to choose to follow Him. He wants them free from the devil so that they can cleave to Him. Now, during this fortnight of freedom, that the bishops of the United States have invited all Catholics to reflect on a particular kind of freedom, our religious freedom. They point out to us that this religious freedom that we enjoy as Catholics, as Americans, is among the proudest boasts of the Church on these shores. Our founding fathers knew that King George III did not make them a free people. They knew that they were free even before they broke their allegiance to the king. Their declaration, signed 236 years ago today, and I had to use a calculator to figure that out, is based on an obvious fact. We are free because God is free. We are free because God is free. As creatures made in God's image and likeness, He has given us a share in His freedom. We're His children, and our freedom corresponds to who we are. The conclusion of our founding fathers was then obvious to them and ought to be to us. Among all the freedoms which the new nation needed to recognize, there is one that ultimately serves the very reason for freedom. Religious freedom is a freedom from coercion from the state, which might force one to act against one's conscience, and it is a freedom with a purpose. It is for something. It is for not only our worship of God, but also for the ability to carry out our Catholic faith into the public square in words and especially in deeds of charity. This is our first, most cherished liberty, and we are proud to possess it as Americans and as Catholics. Why have our bishops chosen to make, and some people have asked me this, a big deal of religious liberty now? Well, let me be clear. It has very little to do with contraception. It also has very little to do with the Church getting into politics. If anything, the state has gotten into the Church, and not vice versa. We have celebrated the Fortnight of Freedom, which concludes today, because we ought to recognize that we are now at a crossroads. Our cherished religious liberty is under siege. There are multiple examples at the federal, the state, and the local level of greater restrictions to the ability of all believers to exercise their religious freedom. The church has chosen to speak out, yes, to the dismay of some, because she wants and even has a right to demand that the state continue to recognize and promote the right of all believers, not only to worship God, but also to speak and act in the public square. Others have asked, why are we speaking about religious liberty when there are so many other important issues? Well, the church and individual believers can't speak out for the unborn, can't run a soup kitchen for the poor, can't encourage legislation to help our stumbling economy without a voice, without a free voice, without the ability to speak and to act outside the confines of these walls. Without this ability, we can't speak and act for the common good for all of these very important issues of our day. So where do we go from here? We are concluding our Fortnight for Freedom this day. Is it all over? Is that all there is? I would suggest not. During this Fortnight of Freedom, we have been inspired by several martyrs who lost their lives because they dared to exercise their religious freedom. I think, personally, that it is providential that their feast days took place during this fortnight, from the 21st of June until today. And so the path before us, where we go from here, is really to follow them. They tell us that our road ahead will demand many gifts and virtues which were evident in their lives and for which we must now and each day beg of God that we, you and I, can also live. Where do we go from here? Well, first we need to move forward with wisdom. The wisdom of St. Thomas More, who on the scaffold of King Henry VIII gave witness to the true meaning of life and said, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." We move forward with courage. The courage of St. John the Baptist, who did not fear the wrath of King Herod and dared to point out how the king had gone terribly astray from the law of God. We move forward with humility, the humility of St. Peter, who, when they came to crucify him in Nero's circus, said, "I'm not worthy to be put on the cross as my Lord was. Therefore turn my cross and crucify me head downward." We move forward with perseverance. The perseverance of St. Paul, who wrote to his disciple Timothy, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." With these gifts and with these virtues, we join those saints whose feast days we celebrated during this Fortnight of Freedom. And we join them to insist, as St. Thomas More did to King Henry VIII. We insist, as John the Baptist did to King Herod. We insist, as St. Peter and St. Paul did to the Emperor Nero, that we are free to speak and act according to our faith. Our religious liberty is not granted by the government, but by God. And that government, if it is to be good government, must recognize it for all its citizens. Each of these martyrs, I would suggest, spoke very profound words which ring true to this very day. But they are saints not only because of what they said, but also because of how they lived their lives, especially life's last breath. They followed the advice of another great saint, St. Francis of Assisi, who said, "Preach often, and if necessary, use words." Their words made a difference. Their actions changed the world. Our words and actions can certainly do the same.